In the day-to-day business of feed milling, there are times where manufacturers forget to pay attention to detail, often leading to lower quality feed output. My colleague Jahara Imtiaz is talking to John Smillie, formerly from the Canadian Feed Research Centre and current division manager at Country Junction Feeds in Canada, on what factors enhance quality in feed milling so that feed millers can stay ahead of their game on a constant basis.
Hello, John. Thank you so much for joining on our podcast today. To start off with, could you give our listeners a short introduction about yourself?
Oh, thank you, Zara. I've been in feed milling for about 35 years. I started in Scotland, working in the northeast of Scotland with a cooperative where we manufactured all types of animal feed. Then moved to Canada in the early 2000s. I worked in a premix plant and worked in various feed businesses within Canada. Most recently, I worked at the Canadian Feed Research Centre in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, where we did all different types of feed production research. And just recently, I moved to the feed division manager role with Country Junction Feeds in central Alberta.
So to start off with, we're going to talk about what factors enhance feed quality during the feed milling process. So could you tell us, how do you define what quality means in feed milling?
Well, it can be really complex or really simple, but quality is providing the customer feed that performs to their expectation at the farm, at the barn, wherever. So providing the appropriate form of feed to the right type of livestock at the right time that allows the livestock to perform. We can go into much greater depth, and there are many schools of thought on quality, but you can define it nutritionally as meeting the exact nutritional requirements, or you can define it physically that the pellets have no dust, or the particle size of the mash is even and exactly as desired by the type of animal. So quality means different things to different people. But really, at the end of the day, it's most important to the consumer of the feed, the person that's paying, that the livestock perform to their expectations or beyond their expectations on the feed that you supply, and getting the nutritional package correct and getting the physical package correct, delivering that on time to the right bin to the customer is what makes a quality feed manufacturing delivery service.
And there are many factors which go into ensuring quality in feed milling. So can you tell our listeners what the main things to look out for in good feed quality control programs?
Yes, having a quality control program is essential in today's world, where we monitor livestock performance to 2 decimal places or more. We need to be absolutely sure that we're providing the right feed to the right livestock, and the feed is appropriate for the age of that livestock at the time. So in the quality program, you need to have clear written directives, whether it's the expectation of what the feed must be, or the standard operating procedures, so as the operators know how to run the machinery, or the appropriate processes for checking the feed and recalling the feed, or adjusting the feed manufacturer accordingly. So a quality control program, again, is not just one thing. It's a living document that encompasses everything from ingredient purchasing to shipping and delivery of the feed. And within that program, each person has a very significant role in providing the mill with the quality ingredients, providing the operators with their quality instruction, the devices to monitor the feed, quality and ultimately the delivery service. If we look narrowly at this and we look specifically at the feed quality, if you're producing a mash feed, a coarse, well, not necessarily coarse, but a coarse or fine mash, where you're not pelleting it, you want that grist size to be even as possible. And you can use a sieve stack, you can use all sorts of more advanced technology to make sure the particle size is in the desired range for the animal group that you're feeding. If we talk about pelleting, then we want to look at the hardness of the pellets, the size of the pellets, the length of the pellets. Obviously, we can govern length by the knife placement. We can decide on the size of the pellet before we start manufacture by choosing the correct die, and then we can measure the hardness of those pellets using a pellet hardness tester, or we can measure the durability of those pellets by one of the forms of pellet durability indices, either a tumbling can or a Holman style blower, where you have a proportional number that tells you how hard the pellets are. And then the final, or another factor in pellet quality, is the proportion of fines that are left with the pellets when you load them. Beyond that, you don't have so much control, but you can measure that by taking a sample of the pellets, sieving them, and getting the proportion of fines. The proportion of fines, which can be caused for other reasons, is related to the pellet hardness, but is not directly proportional to the pellet hardness. You can have more fines in there for other reasons. And people familiar with the workings of feed mill will know many reasons why you can get fines back in among the pellets that you shouldn't be there. So you can make very hard pellets, but still have too many fines. You can make almost dust-free pellets, but they're not hard enough. And when you transport them and deliver them, there's no pellets left when they get to the barn. So many techniques are available for doing this. Quality of mash, quality of fine, quality of pellets can be monitored at the production plant, and then you choose to ship or remanufacture. But it's key that you bear the quality criteria in mind when you're trying to service a customer business.
So ensuring good quality pellets is one of the most important factors to look out for in a good feed quality program. Am I right? Great.
Yes, definitely.
What about moisture? Moisture is a huge battle in feed milling. How do people ensure that it is controlled?
Excellent question. Yeah, moisture is both our friend and our enemy in feed. We are adding moisture for production efficiency reasons. A little bit more moisture in the mixture will help it pellet more easily. Adding steam in the conditioning process before pelleting improves pellet quality, and having that either water or steam mixed efficiently through a quality conditioning equipment or quality mixing equipment can give you a better quality pellet, increased throughput, less wear and tear on the machinery. So there's lots of moisture adds lots of advantages in the pelleting process. But once the pellet is made, you have to extract that moisture. Not entirely, but you have to extract all the free moisture that is not bound chemically within the pellet, and allow that moisture to escape. And that happens during the cooling process. In more extreme situations where you're using expanders or extrusion technology, which can be used, you have to have a drying process because you use more moisture, and so you need a combination of drying and cooling. In traditional pelleting, cooling is enough, and you cool the product by usually by air. You move air through a bed of product, whether it's a horizontal cooler or a counterflow cooler, depending on the technology you have available in your plant. So you need a good, clean supply of air that then can be drawn through the bed of product. And as that air moves through the product, it picks up the moisture from the pellets, takes that moisture, takes that heat away, and then it gets the pellets cooler, firmer, harder, ready to be stored and then shipped. If you don't remove the moisture, first of all, the pellets that remain are softer and more likely to crumble, more likely to break up in the handling process. But by leaving the moisture in there, you'll leave conditions for molds, bacteria, fungi, whatever to grow. So getting the moisture out of the product is critical for it to be a clean and healthy product that you then deliver to your customers.
Is there any tips you can give our listeners as to what best methods or like on the field practical steps that they can take to control the moisture levels?
Yes. Well, first of all, is measurement. You should be able to, at some point within your plant, extract a sample of the product either from just before the cooler or in the cooler, and extract a sample after the cooler. You're then able to assess the moisture level before and after the cooling process, or the cooling and drying process, so you can understand how much moisture that you're taking out of the product. So you have to, at that point, be able to say, hey, we're removing enough moisture, or we're not removing enough moisture. At the very least, a temperature probe in the cooler or in the cooler-based discharge, so that you can measure the temperature of the pellets coming from the cooler, and you could instantly be warned if the pellets are too warm. Then in terms of improving cooling of pellets, starting with some of the real basics, if it's a horizontal or straight tray cooler that involves the product rotating from one level down to the next, you can slow the process down so the products the product remains in the cooler for longer, therefore increasing the cooling time and therefore increasing the moisture removal time. In a counterflow cooler situation, you want to look at the cooler, make sure that the bed is even, that there is not too much pellets in one corner and not enough in another, or all piled in the middle, or all piled in the corners and none in the middle. So you want a nice even bed in a counterflow cooler. That encourages more even airflow through the product bed and better cooling. Then if you have the capacity, you can raise the upper level probe in the cooler and increase the bed depth, so that effectively increases cooling time. You can increase or decrease the cooling discharge cycle, just to make sure that the product is discharging evenly and is cool when it comes out. But I think the key things in all this are monitoring and observation, and checking the product before it leaves. The other area I've found over the years, and they're becoming less expensive, and in fact there's many variations you can have on your cell phone nowadays, your mobile phone. There is a relatively low cost thermal technology. You can download that thermal photography app, and then take a picture of the inside of your cooler, and you can see the hot areas and the cool areas, and you can then establish if the product is cooling evenly. So if it's available to your listeners, available to your clients, they can evaluate the variation in cooling of product simply using a thermal image camera within their phone, within their cell phone.
Oh, that's very interesting. So coming back to, I mean, that's software. Coming back to machinery, how important does the choice of machinery play in enhancing quality in feed milling? I mean, this is a question that everybody, I suppose, has in mind, does it really matter the brand that you buy? Or, can you, if you get the basics right, does the choice of machinery really matter?
I think that's a very good question. And it ties in with something else in feed milling. Each company, each feed production company has its own choices to make. And I think it would be wrong to recommend one machine type over another. But there's lots of factors you must consider when you're purchasing feed milling machinery. Generally, it's complex. Generally, it's expensive. And if you're making that kind of investment on behalf of your business, you want to purchase that machine from a reputable supplier who has backup and support, who can give you spare parts when needed on time and doesn't have a backlog. The current global COVID situation doesn't help with that at the moment. And you need that machine manufacturer to be able to provide the appropriate training and support and maintenance instruction on the machine, so they can actually support what they sell you. Someone who sells you a fantastic machine, but it doesn't work quite right, and they'll just walk away and the sale's over and you have no after sales support. You're left with this expensive piece of machinery that's not operating optimally, is a very bitter experience. If you have a more or less expensive machine, but you have excellent post-sales service where the manufacturer stands by their equipment, they support you, they train you to use the machine optimally, and they have a good supply chain of parts and whatever you need to maintain that machine going into the future. That's most important. And that tends to make me prefer the established machine manufacturers who have the experience to give that kind of service and support, rather than perhaps some of the newer manufacturers who have not yet developed that network and support mechanism. But that's a broad view on what is important when selecting machinery.
And could you tell us, I mean, you've been in the industry for so long, so what areas do feed millers often overlook when it comes to ensuring quality, the little details that make a big difference?
Yeah, I think what happens there is, and we all do it, myself included, that after a number of years in the industry, a number of years manufacturing feed, you can become complacent. You think you know how it works. You think you understand the process as well as you will ever understand it, and you perhaps stop learning, or you're less attentive to your quality program, or you're less attentive to your planned maintenance program, or something like that, whether it be financial constraints, whether it be human resource constraints, or whether it be that you just become a little bit complacent, and then mistakes creep in. So I don't think there's one specific reason that people forget something, or that some element of the feed production process fails or trips up. But I think that that can happen in the process, and it comes back to training and perhaps retraining. So you must continue to train your experienced operators, as well as or retrain your experienced operators, as well as give the training and support to your new operators.
I think that ties up well with our last question about the human factor, because you can set all the procedures you want, but people have to follow protocol. So in your personal experience, how do you ensure that people stick to the program?
Yeah, that does tie in nicely. I think one of the things is your operators in your feed mill have to understand why you have a quality program and what you're trying to achieve. It's not just a series of words on a page that they try and follow. They understand that you're making animal feed, and they understand that animal feed, if it's for a baby chick, has to be a very small crumb because it's a baby chick, or if it's a cow or whatever, it's a large diameter roll or cube. They understand the type of livestock that they're trying to feed, so they understand what you are trying to achieve in your feed production business. And it's difficult, but you want to make your operators feel it's more than just a job, that they have pride in what they're producing, because they're producing a food product that is going into the food chain. And yes, you want them to do it superly efficiently and extremely fast, but you also want them to do it correctly. So having that training that encompasses some form of buy-in to the program, so they actually feel engaged with it. It's not just following a protocol. The other thing is, when you're training operators on feed milling, you've got to make the process come alive to them. It's not just stand on this square and press that button and the machine runs and everything's okay. They have to engage as to why they do this, why they do certain tasks and certain sequences, why it's important to pay attention, why it's necessary to be very accurate if you're adding medicinal ingredients or small level inclusions of vitamins or some minerals. So they know that, you know, the degree of accuracy required when you're adding vitamin C or whatever is completely different to the degree of accuracy required when you're adding wheat or a protein source. Yes, you want it all to be accurate, but there is levels there. And I think training emphasizes that. And as I said in my previous answer, some of the issues that creep into feed milling are because of complacency. So retraining, just going over the key steps, making your senior operators aware again of the things they learned at the beginning, and therefore that flows through to your junior operators who learn from their senior operator colleagues, and then pick up the same attention to detail, the same engagement, the same enthusiasm for manufacturing the feed.
Okay, thank you so much, John, for joining us today and explaining. I mean, it's a very complicated subject, but you did explain it in such a short period of time.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for listening to yet another Asian Agribiz podcast. Hope you gained some important tips on how to improve efficiencies in your feed mill. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcast to keep up to date on the latest happenings in the animal protein industry in Asia.